The one thing I do want to point out about what I'm going to call the down the hill option that was just presented, I do not see that as a viable idea. There are significant impacts to sensitive slopes, vegetation, et cetera, you get down there, and I don't believe for a moment that it actually would work. So I think to start the discussion right now, I am unconvinced that that is a viable version of things, and so I don't even want to talk about that as an option. And I think that that would be trading one impact for another, and it doesn't seem one.
Has anybody at the school, and you know, I applaud both of you for presenting some really nice adaptive reuse plans. One side says it works, the other side says it doesn't, right. But that's what we asked you to go back and explore, so it's nice to see it done that well from both sides. Is any of the consideration here, is it something that nobody's really touched on? If you start going into all of these buildings, as Bruce is sort of, it looks very good when you see it projected up there, but there has to be between still needing new square footage, which Bruce admits that you're going to need an outbuilding of 10,000, 12,000, whatever you can't, you know, mitigate within the existing structures. You're also touching a great deal of those structures. You're putting a new assembly use on the second story of existing buildings. You're undoubtedly going to have all kinds of structural retrofit. I mean, could the school even function? And that's always a logistical concern for any educational facility when they're remodeling or adding on, is, are you able to function? I mean, I'm looking at this site plan and it looks like 90% of the campus would be impacted in one way or the other. Structures would have to be safely cordoned off. Even though you're working on the second floor, the first floor is probably closed as well too. It just doesn't seem to me logistically practical that the school could be open for that year or more.
Well, no, it couldn't. And the point, of course, you know, just for construction safety purposes.
Our overriding issues are the preservation of the historic homes and the beautification of the campus. And we may be willing to overcome some of those issues if we see a plan that we can get behind as a neighborhood. With the 750 students on this current plan, the impacts on our neighborhood and our community are just unmitigable and unmanageable. They won't be able to manage the traffic. They don't have any neighborhood buy-in, so the community relations are just absolutely in the tank.
I mean, because clearly you're showing since essentially since 1997 practically, you've been operating at the level that you're requesting permission to operate at today. But you've been doing it based on the 640 mitigation measure from the original CUP. So I think it's a little bit unfair for some of the neighbors to come up here and say 750 would never work in this neighborhood, because 750 has been working there for 12 years.
It's been working.
And good, bad, or indifferent, however, we can argue how well it's been working, but it has been there. And the benefit, if this project moves forward, is, of course, you're now mitigating for 750 instead of 640, so you're rewriting history to make it more compliant. So I think that number is something that's significant. I agree totally with Commissioner Naslund. I do not believe that the downhill option is something that will work.
Mr. McCoon, I think the concepts that were presented here by your group are interesting, but I think if you look at the pictures that was presented by Mr. McCurdle, I guess, your plans, part of the charm and beauty of the site is in fact those open spaces and vistas that meander throughout a relatively small site, and that's what really gives this site, this school, the beauty that it deserves. So adding on new structures between buildings, I think, would tremendously detract from the beauty that you already have. So I really don't see how that's going to be beneficial in putting new structures within that campus. But let me ask you on the master plan, so 750 is your build out?
Yes.
You're not going to be growing any more than that?
No.
Because you really can't. If you take the 20,000 square footage of academic space, and the total is 60,000, I believe, right? 86,000. That comes out to a square footage average of 115 square foot per student.
Yes.
You're packed.
Yes.
That's 10 by 10 per student, all of your built space.
Yes, and I think if you look in tab 1, I think it is in our handout to you, where Sister Dolores provided her tabulation of all of the reasons why 750 is the right number for the academy here, is that's exactly it. They're built out at 750. And a number of their facilities are specifically sized to accommodate up to 750 students. For example, I believe the activity center. And the only places where they can assemble the entire student body for various assembly type functions can only accommodate 750 students.
Somebody mentioned that, you know, they would be able to put some classrooms in a basement. That would be the worst place to have a classroom. I mean, I don't know what they would learn, but it's the environment of looking out and seeing the site, and that is so critical. And I think you have a jewel, and I think you've been able to save a lot of those things, especially the plant materials that you have on the interior side. And as I said, the exterior, the perimeters that you're doing some improvements on, I think you've matched it with complementary landscape that will enhance that entire neighborhood.
One or the other. I'm deeply concerned that not only the adaptive reuse to what, as I look at the pictures provided of the insides and the outsides of those buildings on campus, it would take a great deal of care and effort not to bastardize those buildings by the time you've adaptive reused them. Plus, then, I think it was Commissioner Ontai was talking about the nature of the campus that makes it so special. I mean, you know, you've been involved in the Salk Institute's efforts over the years, which is a very similar type project in that it's not only the buildings, but it's the campus, it's the setting, it's the whole setting that it creates between the buildings and its environment. I'm nervous that just plopping new buildings around this campus could potentially destroy essentially what is a 1 in a million resource, versus then I look back to the houses of the Collier House and the Copley House, and you know, the pictures that we got provided this time really helped, and they're nice resources for that area. There's no doubt about it. I suspect if it weren't for the state law, there was probably already an effort that they would have been designated. But having said that, I look at that and I look at this handout that we were given, and I'm going through here, and they're highlighted for the sort of similar styles that are built between the heights. And there's literally probably 100 other examples of this in that time period. So as a historical expert, how do you gauge, you know, for us in our education between something that's 1 in a million and might potentially be ruined versus something that's a little less rare and is probably perpetuated throughout the neighborhood, as far as how do we make a decision?
That's where I'm at. The frustrating part for me is it's too bad you guys weren't doing this for the last 2 years.
Can I address that, Commissioner Schultz?
Well, no, I know what, I think I know that.
We brought them up at the community planning level.
Okay, yeah,
more than
that's
a
what we
year
went
ago.
through. That's what we went through the first time around. So I get that. But that's the frustrating part, is that now we're putting ourselves in a position where we've got to essentially redesign a whole project. You're, in essence, second-guessing a school's decision to do certain things with to run their school a certain way. I mean, it would be like somebody coming to my business and telling me, you know, this is the way you should run it.
Respectfully, Mr. Schultz, we met with Dasan, David, and I quite early this in Soho, and these were the same ideas that we told them then. And they said what they said to us at the time, we already looked at those and dismissed them and didn't go further.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to, and maybe that's where we are.
At least a year and a half ago.
Okay, and that's maybe where we are, and that's where I'd rather be. I mean, I'd rather just say they listened to you and they dismissed it and they don't want to do it, and then it puts me in the position that I just have to make a decision. So that's why I'm kind of asking you guys. I think I know where you guys are at. You'd rather keep the homes there. You made that as your #1 issue, so. All right, please vote. Call the roll, and it passes unanimously.